welcome back to the Boropolis podcast YouTube channel. I'm joined with Nathan, and we are back after the international break to preview Boro's game against Peterborough tomorrow. Nathan, first of all, how are you doing? How have you been coping without Middlesbrough during the 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's been a funny one. I think usually with international breaks, it's been okay in recent months with England, but they were dismal in the week. So yeah, glad to have Boro back for some fantastic football, hopefully.
Well, I think going into the international break off the back of Hull away and then having to watch England perform the way they did, it hasn't been great, to be honest. I was hoping that the international break might have been a bit of a rest, a bit of a regroup for the Middlesbrough fans. But yeah, after the press conference this morning, it goes from bad to worse, really. So we'll get into that first of all. Obviously, we'll play Peterborough tomorrow, and we already knew after the Hull game that there was going to be some injury problems, probably not to the extent of what we now know they are. So before I ask basically how you're feeling about going into the game tomorrow after this news, I'm just going to reel off our injury and suspension. So tomorrow, Middlesbrough will be without Anthony Dijksteel, Mark Bowler, Grant Hall, Dale Fry, and Lee Peltier, who was obviously suspended. Nathan, do you have any mates at uni that might be able to fill in for us at the back tomorrow?
I mean, we're really struggling, aren't we? Yeah, and I think that the weirdest part about all those injuries is they all seem to be quite long term. It said in the press conference, Warnock said Hall and Fry out for 3 to 4 weeks, which is a long period of time. It pretty much takes us up until the next international break. So that's a bit of an iffy one. Dijksteel still no return date. And Bowler being crocked in training yesterday is not ideal as well. So yeah, Sol Bamba it is. We'll see what he can do by himself tomorrow.
I mean, of course, we have got Paddy McNair returning from international duty, but as said this morning, he hasn't been back in training yet. So I mean, knowing our luck, his taxi or his car, whichever form of transport he chooses to bring him back to the training ground, will probably break down and he'll just have to miss the game or something like that. So yeah, I mean, it probably picks itself, the back two tomorrow at least, obviously with Sol and Paddy McNair. Hopefully makes it back to the training ground. And then obviously we're without any fullbacks, really. I mean, normally I'd ask sort of your prediction for the team, but I'm more asking you now, is there anyone available? Obviously, we've seen William Kokolo on the bench not so long ago. Who's going to fill in, and what do you think is really going to be our defence tomorrow?
Well, it's a horrible one to predict because, of course, the players that are going to be playing in these positions are going to be shoehorned in, and whether they do perform well or not is yet to be seen. Of course, we've seen Tavernier playing a wing back role, and he played in a back four for the second half against Blackpool. Did okay, but you can tell he's out of position. Isaiah Jones has played at left wing back, which he played in at Coventry, and that was to be seen that it was nowhere near his correct position, and we got caught out many a time because of that. So it'll be strange to see what he goes with. I think Kokolo may have to be the one to come in playing at left back. So who knows what he'll go with.
Yeah, it'll be interesting more than anything to see who he comes up with. I tweeted out, I'm not sure if you've seen it just before we started this podcast, saying a back four of Rory the Lion, Bamba, Leo, and the tea lady looks about as solid as what we can probably put up at the minute. So yeah, maybe Kokolo might play, and perhaps the tea lady might have to go on the bench and just fill a number there. Or maybe, I mean, we made a joke out of it a few podcasts ago, if I remember rightly. Me and you might get the call up.
Maybe, yeah. They if they want to call people up from the West Stand, they can have me and you.
Yeah, perhaps. To be honest, I'd like to back myself over the tea lady, but we'll wait and see for tomorrow, Nathan.
Yeah, so it's just such a strange one, this injury crisis. I suppose it just goes back to the transfer window, and you look at the decisions to let Spence and Coulson go, the decision to let Nathan Wood go. Of course, I think it has to be seen that you can't have expected 3 out of the 4 players that can fill in at centre half to be cropped for large periods of time. Of course, Bamba, we do know that he can't really play lots of 90 minutes back to back with his age and his fitness still. But it's just typical that this had happened to us.
Well, of course, it's a whole different story as well. Obviously, you mentioned the players that are out for tomorrow and they look to be out. It's not just going to be tomorrow's game. There's the risk that they could be out for 2 or 3 weeks. And speaking of Hall and Fry, potentially even longer. So it's not only the injuries we currently have. Of course, Sol Bamba is probably going to have to be asked to play 3 or 4 games on the bounce, where at his age, coming back from what he has, I mean, that's even more of a risk. That's potentially going to cause even more injuries. It's just not a good position to be in. Obviously, we've failed to bring in anyone over the international break, any free agents. So, yeah, it promises to be certainly interesting tomorrow, but an interesting few weeks. I mean, does this change perhaps? Obviously, the pressure was building on Warnock prior to really even the whole game, and especially after the whole game. Obviously, does this injury crisis change that if we were to be beaten tomorrow, that there would be some sort of leeway in his favour, that obviously we are without pretty much our full defence? Or do you think that it's potentially partly down to him because he has let, as you say, the likes of Coulson, Spence and Nathan Wood go? And I seen this morning that Nathan Wood still hasn't even started for Hibs, so it makes that even more confusing, really.
Yeah, I think still it is a game that we need to go in and try and get a positive result out of. I mean, Peterborough are a side that are new to the division, and while they did perform really well last year in League One, they've begun the season and they have struggled to not only score goals, but they struggle when being attacked as well, and they do seem to have a leaky defence, and when they do fall to a poor result, they do concede a lot of goals in those games as well. I've seen plenty of 3-0 defeats for them, so it's such a strange one. I'm just hoping that our attackers can, when they do get the chances, can put them away, and hopefully we can get the positive result that we do need desperately.
Yeah, I think obviously for ourselves after the international break and Warnock himself, it's very important that we have a positive performance, and really I think it's potentially gone past the point of a positive performance. I think what we really need is a positive result, and for me the only really positive result from tomorrow's game, injuries or not, would be a win. It'd be interesting to hear what you think. Do you think tomorrow is a must-win game?
Yeah, I do think we need to go tomorrow and take the game to them. We need to finish our chances. We've spoken in the whole game and in the whole podcast and over the full season about us needing to be clinical. We do only have them couple of chances in a game where they look like big chances and we seem to not be able to take them. That just needs to change, unfortunately. We need to take those chances. If we're not going to create all that many, we do need to be more clinical with the chances that we get. And hopefully our forwards, I've heard Hernandez could be in contention tomorrow. Hopefully our forward line just does the business tomorrow and puts some chances away, because we're in desperate need of that.
Yeah, well, obviously we've had that slight bit of positive news with Hernandez. Moving on to Peterborough and what sort of threat that they're going to pose to us tomorrow. Obviously, they will be without pretty much their star man, Johnson Clark Harris. Now, he's obviously suffered the same fate as Mark Bowler and been fined and punished for tweets made a lot of years ago. I mean, yeah, we've spoken about that in the past and spoke how ridiculous it is. So yeah, it sort of works in our favour that he will be missing tomorrow. Obviously, he's I believe their top goal scorer so far this season, or joint top scorer. Another player that obviously has been a big threat, and I think over the years I've seen a lot of Middlesbrough fans sort of say that they would like this player at our club. It is, of course, Siriki Dembele. I hope I've pronounced his first name correctly. Obviously, a very pacey and dynamic forward who's going to stretch our defence, try to run at Sol Bamba and get him behind him. He's just one player, of course. They've also got Sammy Smodux, who's got a very good goal record, definitely last year, and has also started this season, quite brightly after coming back from injury. They're two players, of course, that are going to threaten us. I mean, Nathan, does the thought of those two scare you a little bit, running at our one-man defence?
Yeah, they'd scare me no matter what anyway. They're the two players that possess lots of pace, and we do know our problems in the back line with the lack of pace that we have. So if there were to be slipping balls in behind, then I'd be seriously worried for us. But I'm hoping that that our defence, no matter what it is, because it seems like it could be anyone in that back line tomorrow. I hope that they'll be able to deal with them somewhat, but mainly hoping that our attackers do the business and score some up the other end.
Yeah, and another player that we've sort of highlighted. I mean, I mentioned in the previous podcast, again, every time we've sort of previewed a game and spoke about some of the opposition players, it seems more often than not that they've either scored or impacted the game in some way. So hopefully we sort of break that curse against Peterborough. But one player that you obviously know a lot about, given that you are at Lincoln University and have seen a lot of Lincoln last season, George Grant. I'm just going to let you talk, especially for some of your mates that might be Lincoln fans watching and listening to this.
Yeah, Grant played for Lincoln City last year in League One. Was captain of the club, and he scored 13 goals from midfield and set up 7. So he's a very big danger from the centre of the park. Takes a good set piece, whether that be free kick. He takes the penalties as well. But it's a funny story with George Grant. I watched a lot of Lincoln on Sky Sports last season. Of course, they were pushing for the playoffs last season, and every time I watched Lincoln on Sky Sports, they got a penalty, and every time that George Grant took that penalty, he missed it, had it saved. So yeah, that's a funny thing. But I've got Lincoln fans that are hoping tomorrow, because they have that affiliation with me now, that George Grant is kept quiet and Boro do a job on him and keep him silent, really.
Yeah, well, that's what we'll be hoping for, and of course your mates, the Lincoln fans, as well. I mean, really, tomorrow, obviously, we've already spoke about the injury problems, but it remains to be seen what Neil Warnock's going to come up with. I suppose my final question before we both talk about our predictions is, if you're in Neil Warnock's shoes today or tomorrow morning, he spoke previously about some of the ridiculous times that he decides his final 11. If you're, waking up in the middle of the night tomorrow and thinking, right, this needs to be my team, this is the team that's going to beat Peterborough, what team are you putting out to face them tomorrow?
It is a very tough one. I'd probably, and this isn't like Neil Warnock, but I think this would probably be what I'd have to go with. I'd have 3 at the back, and I'd have Howson dropping in there as almost like a third centre half with Bamba and McNair. I'd have Kokolo as the left wing back, and Tavernier as the right wing back. I'd have Piero and Saliki in midfield, which it won't happen, but we'll see.
I think we can already rule that out, to be honest. Unless
Yeah.
it's a surprise.
And then any front three. Is it front three? No. Yeah, I'd have Crooks in that midfield as well. And then up front, I would still have Watmore and Sparrow. So that'd be mine, but I think it'll differ very much so from Neil Warnock's.
Yeah, like you say, it'll probably differ, and I think it's fair to say that it would be a huge shock if both Martin Piero and Saliki start. But at this stage, do we really have any other choice?
No, we're seriously struggling.
To be honest. So yeah, just to wrap this up, of course, it's just a quick preview. What are your predictions for tomorrow? We'll go with the usual one from your heart and one from your head.
It's such a strange one because I think it all depends on what he sets up with. I think usually going into these, we do understand that he probably will set up in a similar way most weeks, but with the personnel issue, I'm not too sure how he will. But I think for both, I think I'm just going to go with 2-0 Boro.
Okay,
I love that.
Backing us to win. So for me, I think from my heart, I am saying, especially because of the injury problems that we've had, we'll have to dig deep. We'll have to really rally the team on everyone in the stadium. So I'm going to go 2-1. A real nail biter, hanging on for dear life the last sort of 10.
God, don't say that.
Yeah. Obviously a 2-1 win. However, I hate to be that guy, but my head is saying 1-0 Peterborough, probably a goal in around sort of the 60th to 70th minute, and probably either Piero or Saliki to lose his man, and Warnock to then blame the whole game and result on one of the names that probably hasn't been playing as much this season. So I mean, yeah, let's hope it's my heart's prediction rather than my head, Nathan.
I bet you it'll be George Grant that scores it as well.
Yeah, just to rub salt in the wounds, of course. So it'll certainly be an interesting occasion tomorrow at the Riverside, of course. We'll be looking forward to it, and we'll be recording a podcast on Sunday to dissect all of the action and hopefully a Middlesbrough win. Let's keep our fingers crossed, and we'll see you again soon for another video on the Boropolis podcast YouTube channel.